Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Sometimes the best way to find a living is to stay right where you are and study with UAS online. Career-specific distance programs from the University of Alaska Southeast are the fastest way to increase your earning power.
We connect all over the world.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 7th of September. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that several ways. Of course, there's online at weather.gov/Alaska or weather.gov/Fairbanks/Anchorage or /Juneau. We'll localize your information a little bit more. All of it is reachable from any of the other pages there, of course. And if you go to weather.gov/AAWU, you can also get to the Aviation Weather Unit's forecast information there. The Alaska Weather Information Line is always open. Write down the numbers you use when you get to the forecast information there, and you can dial it in a little bit faster on the next time, 1-800-472-0391. And you're welcome to email me or any of the other folks at the Alaska Weather TV Desk team, nws.ar, that's short for Alaska Region, .tvweather@noaa.gov. And of course, if you've got questions about the website, about the program time changes, anything under the sun, we'll be happy to help any way we can. And speaking of that, just a reminder, if you're watching us at 5 o'clock in the morning now on any of the Alaska Public Media member stations, that could be KTOO, KYUK, or right here at KAKM, and you are more than welcome to take a look at some of the other program offerings there at 360 North. That occurs a little bit earlier in the evening at 7:30. And of course, if you're watching us on ARCS and KUAC, you're still receiving this program at 5:30 p.m. So there are some other options, as well as YouTube. In the search bar, go to AKwx TV, and that is Alaska Weather's channel, brought to you by Alaska Public Media on YouTube. It's usually available a little bit after the show is put on air around 5:30 in its original form there, and you can see that anytime that you want. It works great on your mobile devices. Of course, if you have limited connectivity, you want to make sure you've got a little bit of a stronger signal. Speaking of strong signals, well, we just keep rolling right into the next thing here. It is going to be a cold night, and the folks up in the Fairbanks National Weather Service office tell me that they want me to tell you it's going to be cold. In fact, it looks like it's going to be the first frost of the night coming our way tonight in Fairbanks. Looking for lows at the airport close to 30 degrees, but wait, there's more cold in North Pole and the Gold Stream Valley. Temps could dip into the upper 20s there. So if you haven't brought in the plants yet, now would be a really good time to do that. Hopefully you're not watching at 5 o'clock in the morning, because this news will not be quite so fresh and useful there. But Fairbanks near 30 degrees, North Pole and Gold Stream Valley likely well into the 20s there. So prepare. Here it comes. Winter is knocking on the door, isn't it? Here's a look at the visible satellite picture, and you can see a wealth of dry air out across the Gulf of Alaska, but one sign that we're not quite ready for winter is that stronger southerly surge working into the Gulf of Alaska over some very warm water, and some very warm and wet air is building here. We've got two systems that are going to develop fairly quickly in the next 24 to 36 hours. One of those is spy just kind of the northern fringes here, and another one's just barely on your screen. Most of you probably can't even see it. I have these really big monitors, and it's really cool, and I can see a whole lot of stuff. Right here, though, if you just get a little tinge of the clouds, that's what's coming our way. Up north, we already have winter falling across the eastern Brooks Range at about 2,000 feet or so. There's several inches of snow. The Alaska DOT was reporting icy conditions and some slippery roads earlier today, and we expect that's going to be the trend to continue there. If you do have driving plans that take you north tonight, or you're trying to come south, you're likely well aware of that, and folks are probably talking all about it. Just be careful up there and take your time. There could be some poor visibility as we expect the snow to continue as we head through tonight and into tomorrow as things taper off into flurries by Thursday night and Friday. And there's another system coming in behind that for Friday night and into Saturday. So what's on the ground may still be slippery and then be added upon as we get toward the end of the weekend into early next weekend. Here's a look at the infrared satellite picture, and you can see a lot of the cloud cover here across the North Slope. A lot of this is that northerly cold flow working up against the Brooks Range, but look what happens. It comes over and it really dries up. So many along the Yukon Valley have seen generally fair sky throughout the day today, but the focus for that snowfall has been here across the eastern Brooks Range. And again, we expect that to continue. Lower terrain across the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast, it's been warm enough that the sensors are reporting rainfall. The temperatures are pretty close to being rain and snow, so you've probably seen a mix on and off throughout the day, if not more of a drizzle or light rainfall throughout the day. On the other side of things, once that air gets wet again across south central and southwestern Alaska, we've got a weak area of low pressure here, but it's just enough to really push all of that wet air right across the Alaska Range, and it has started to wring that out. And in a very narrow band today, we've detected some pretty decent downpours along the northern fringe of that. You can see that in the bright white clouds stretching over the Alaska Range. Some of those have reached their way into the Matanuska and Susitna valleys and along the northern fringe of Anchorage, maybe down to Eagle River. So don't be surprised if you run into that in the next 24 hours. For southeast, conditions have been generally quiet, but once again, this system here crossing the Gulf tonight and into tomorrow is going to deepen rapidly. And by Friday, it looks like the winds are going to come up at least to gale strength for many across the outer coast, and higher gusts should be expected on the inside as well. So make sure you're watching the weather in southeast. Conditions are going to be changing rapidly. There are a whole lot going on, sign of change, and certainly a sign that winter, once again, is really not all that far off. Here's a look at southeast. We've had some rainfall across the region today. Most of that generally light as a weak area of low pressure is leaving the region. The next one is building in very quickly behind it. Low pressure is also sitting across the western Alaska Range, and again, that rainfall has been generally north and west of that system as it's pushing moisture over and around the mountains. Rain and snow up across the North Slope. Another front's coming in tonight. There's another one behind that as we head into Friday and Saturday, but for the Bering, things are quieting down. High pressure at 1,027 millibars, kind of slowing things down around the Pribilofs. Not a whole lot of precipitation to report. Breezes are generally light. There's been a few blustery gusts from time to time across the Aleutians and the chain today, but nothing really out of the ordinary. A little bit of light rain across Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, and also way out west around Shemya. Again, things are settling down in the west for now. High pressure sitting at 1,027 millibars there for tonight. Up north, we have rain and snow across the North Slope all the way into the Brooks Range. Again, we expect another inch or two across that region as we head through tonight and into tomorrow at lower terrain that could be mixed with rainfall. So don't be surprised if you're seeing raindrops instead of snow just yet. Out across southeast, rain showers continue. We expect some periods of rainfall across south centrals, maybe some fog around Resurrection Bay and just outside of Prince William Sound. And now we're starting to see the beginnings of that Gulf of Alaska storm. Look at the low pressure system at 1,011 millibars. That starts to drop even more as we head into Thursday. Warmer air is racing northward. We still have a protective ridge here across southeast. Showers are in place. There might even be warm enough and unstable enough air across the Talkeetnas and the Alaska Range for an isolated thunderstorm or two. Showers are a sign of a little bit of that instability. The thunderstorm would be kind of the ultimate sign of that. And way out west, not to be outdone, we have another system here that's also trying to get in on the act at 1,002 millibars. That system will also be deepening rapidly. Keep in mind, though, we have high pressure around the Yukon Valley all the way across Alaska and then all the way across the Bering Sea. So what's going to happen with these low pressure systems? Well, they're confined by this ridge here, acting like a weather wall out across the heart of Alaska. So these systems aren't going to come north a whole lot more. As we get into Friday, there we go, a 989 millibar low just west of Yakutat. Look at the pressure lines around here. These are isobars, and once again, in the wintertime, we're always talking about this. The tighter they are, the faster the winds are going to flow. We've created a vacuum here across the northern Gulf, and the winds are just going to start whipping up and down southeastern coastline. Easily gales from many locations. They're 40 knots or so from Yakutat all the way down through the outer coast, and some higher gusts throughout the day, as well as some rainfall. It's going to come whipping through as we go through Friday. So keep your eye on this system again in southeast. Out across the North Pacific, a 988 millibar low south of Adak and Atka. We've got a ridge of high pressure across the Alaska Range and the Aleutian Range, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. So that's going to slow this down a little bit, and it's really going to keep the strongest winds from Dutch Harbor and Unalaska westward, with high pressure also across the western Bering Sea. That's not going to stir up a whole lot of winds across the west coast just yet. And notice we still have our cold up across the north slope with rain and snow expected there through Friday. So a lot going on in each corner of Alaska. One place there shouldn't be a whole lot of activity. Let's pick a spot, maybe Norton Sound. You'll see some clouds there, not a whole lot of wind, but you'll notice it's getting cooler and cooler as we go. And the same should be said for any place that has light winds and clear skies as we go through the interior's forecast in the next several days. Here's a look at the temperatures today. 50s and 60s for most of southeast. The capital city in the mid-50s today. Haines and Skagway a little bit milder. Hyder was 52. Sitka 57. And areas around Glacier Bay, temps there in the mid to upper 50s as well. 56 in Yakutat. 60 in Cordova. Valdez saw 55. 61 in Anchorage. Upper 50s around Homer and Seward. Golcana saw temps closer to 56 today. Northway was 50 degrees. Fairbanks 52. Talkeetna pleasantly mild around 59 degrees there with some periods of rainfall moving through. 44 in Eagle, 46 in Fort Yukon, and then we move northward and drop into the 30s around Arctic Village, AKwx Pass, and colder still as you get across some of the colder spots in the lower spots there in the north slope. The Arctic coast was in the mid-30s. Kaktovik 36, Barrow 36 degrees, Wainwright 38. As you get around Point Hope and Point Lay, you see temperatures at 49 in Kivalina, 51 in Kotzebue. Mid-40s for Shishmaref, it was 52 and milder still in Nome. Galena had 53 degrees. McGrath was 50 degrees as well. 52 in Grayling, 48 in Bethel, and Savunga saw lower 40s today. Cooler out there as those north winds come racing through the Bering Strait. Mid-50s to about 60 degrees around Bristol Bay today. Not too bad. 63 in Kodiak. Mid-50s for the Alaska Peninsula as well as Sand Point. Cold Bay, False Pass, all about the same temp there today. 51 in St. Paul, cooler in St. George. Mid-50s for Adak and Atka, and 54 out in Shemya today. Here's a look at overnight lows. Mid-40s for South Central and upper 40s for most of the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Closer to 50 degrees for southeast. Notice though, once you get north and east of the Copper River Basin into the interior and eastward toward the Alcan, you're looking at 20s to maybe about 30 degrees around the middle Tanana Valley. Again, frost is expected around Fairbanks tonight. 28 for Arctic Village, 34 in Barrow, 32 for Kaktovik, just about 40 in Nome as well as Bethel, and southwest looking at temps in the lower 40s. High temps tomorrow there in the upper 50s with Norton Sound temps like Unalakleet at 53, 54 in Nome, 42 for Barrow, 51 in Fort Yukon. Upper 50s for Fairbanks, so dry air should warm you up fairly quickly. Upper 50s for South Central, Cook Inlet, Matanuska, and the Susitna Valleys included, close to 60 in Kodiak, and upper 50s to lower 60s for southeast. On to flying weather, expect IFR across the Kotzebue Sound and just south of St. Lawrence Island from Wales and Tin City and almost to Nome, but not quite. Areas of MVFR will lurk just offshore of southeast and along the higher terrain, as well as around the Chugach and around Prince William Sound and the western Alaska range and close to the central and western chain. As we get into tomorrow, expect MVFR to continue across the north slope. There's our risk of a few thunderstorms across the northern Alaska range, and MVFR conditions across southeast should improve throughout the day. But let's check your pass conditions. AKwx Pass and Adigan Pass should both see improvement. MVFR conditions expected in both places tomorrow. For Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we'll hover near MVFR through most of the day. In Rainy Pass, we expect to see MVFR through a good part of your day. Windy Pass will lean over toward marginal conditions with lowered ceiling and visibility throughout the afternoon, but Isabel Pass seems to be okay. VFR is expected through most of the day, and Mentasta at this point looking to be VFR. Tanita Pass, we expect MVFR conditions there with the chance for showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Portage Pass, we'll see MVFR conditions developing there, and Chilkoot and White Pass at this point look to be VFR for your Thursday. Here's a look at freezing levels now, and no doubt that cold air continues to drop further and further south. Levels anywhere from 2 to about 6,000 feet across the Yukon Valley. North of the Brooks Range, it's going to be below 2,000 feet. Levels between 6 and about 8,000 feet as you head out into the North Pacific from the Bering Sea. And then here's that warm and wet air building into the Gulf of Alaska. You can see our level stretching as low as 6,000 feet closer to the Gulf, and that includes most of southeast to as high as 14,000 feet as you wrap your way into coastal parts of British Columbia. Icing potential will be a little bit higher up there, above 5,000 feet for some of the deeper moisture, and along the Alaska Range above 6,000 feet, and then south of that we have a pocket of moisture above 10,000 feet, including areas of Haida Gwaii if you are headed southward. That should be light to isolated moderate. Northwesterlies are building in on the jet stream. It's been a fairly persistent flow here across the North Slope the last several days, 50 knots there, but you can see the bumps in the jet stream coming in across the North Pacific. Each one of those bumps is a disturbance capable of generating a new surface weather system, and right now these are going to ramp up the surface weather systems that we have crossing the Gulf and just south of the Aleutians. At 9,000 feet, a broad southerly flow working over the Gulf gives us 35 to about 40 knot winds. Southerlies coming into southeast, they're a little bit lighter coming into south central, and then northerlies on the western side of that trough 10 to about 15 knots or so for most of the west coast. North and westerly winds for the North Slope and northerlies for a good chunk of the Aleutians as well as the Bering Sea. At 3,000 feet, south and southwesterlies are a little bit stronger here over the open water. That's going to help churn up that weather system here for southeast by Friday. Winds out over the open water up to 50 knots. But for most of the interior, they're considerably calmer, 5 to about 15 knots from the west and northwest. Northerlies coming down the west coast about 10 to 15 over the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, about 10 knots there. West of Adak, you see the winds coming in from the south. Those are about 30 to 40 knots or so, and most of south central is looking at a southerly wind over Cook Inlet and the Kenai around 10 knots, with north and easterlies working over the Alaska Range about 10 to 15. Let's look at your aviation weather. You'll see not a whole lot of turbulence for tomorrow, just way out west below 4,000 feet. In just a few minutes, I'll be back with the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider, and joining me again is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. Thanks again for joining us, Cindy.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Sure thing. And I love saying Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska's National Weather Service because that's not weather. Why is the Tsunami Program part of the National Weather Service?
Well, it's because the Weather Service absolutely rocks at warning people for every kind of, devastating natural hazard.
Mm-hmm. The mission of the Weather Service is to protect life and property. And so how does the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska, which is a very unique office, again, within the Weather Service, it's not weather, how do those folks help us protect life and property?
The National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer is a national warning center, and we analyze seismic traces 24/7 all around the world. So when there's an earthquake anywhere on the planet, we see it and analyze it within minutes.
Within minutes, and
Within
there's
minutes.
Actually a goal to have it under, was it 5 minutes?
If there is a tsunami warning to be issued for continental America, yeah, we must get that out, or shoot to get that out in 5 minutes.
Okay. Now that's not something I have ever learned to do, so I know it would be a struggle for me to do that under probably hours. But it is fascinating to watch, and the office is open on a regular basis for tours, right?
Absolutely. Come by Friday.
Okay.
Yep, every Friday at 1, 2, and 3 p.m. and they're open public free tours. And it's the most interesting place on the planet. You really should check it out.
Okay, and the office team is made up of people that are earth scientists, not meteorologists or atmospheric scientists. Talk about some of the types of people that work there.
Right, we are out of place in our National Weather Service, but we are geologists, geophysicists, oceanographers. We even have an astrophysicist on board, computer software architects, electronic technicians that are brilliant and innovative. Our software is all written in-house. Our instrumentation is designed in-house. So it's a really, really unique place, and it's just a couple handfuls of people that work there. So
sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to get a tsunami alert message is on Twitter.
Right.
And I can follow the Twitter address, and we'll put that up on the screen for you there. But it's usually a very quick message that tells you initially what the magnitude of an earthquake could be and about where its epicenter was. What are some of the other ways that you can get that alert message?
Well, Twitter's my favorite too.
Yeah.
And you don't even need a Twitter account to receive
Right.
it. So it just comes in like an SMS message. But
Mm-hmm.
you can also receive it via email, weather radio, of course, the crawler on your television screen, on the internet, Google Alerts,
Right.
marine radio if you're out in harbors and boats. Actually, marine radio is probably,
Yeah, it is a good one.
that's our partnership with the Coast Guard. We're really grateful for that, absolutely. But there's a variety of ways in dissemination.
Okay.
And locally, excuse me, I'm sorry, but
Sure.
locally in the communities, the sirens will go off as
Right.
well.
Right. So lots of different ways to get that very important message very quickly when that matters to you. One of the ways that the Warning Center practices with communities is a test on a yearly basis, right?
Right.
How does that work?
Thanks for bringing that up. It's a controversial issue, but it's super important to help us warn better and really serve Alaskans. So the week of March 27th, the commemoration of the 1964 event, for that week we have a Tsunami Preparedness Week every year. We like communities to get out and do drills and practice and do everything we can to raise awareness. And part of that is a live code test where we actually issue the warning message live and we activate the emergency alert system, which means sirens go off, the TV crawler happens, and it's a test.
We're doing everything that would normally happen without the real threat of the tsunami, just to practice as much as possible.
Right, and this is a major partnership with the State of Alaska, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the Emergency Operations Center, and the Alaska Broadcasters Association. Without the media, we wouldn't be able to do this. So the three groups really work tightly together to do our best to warn, educate the public that this is happening so they don't wonder and get scared about it. It has been remarkable what we've learned. I mean, it pretty much breaks somewhere every time, but then we fix it and it gets better. So a quick example is just a few years ago, we used to, when we issued a message, it would activate the entire state. Right? I mean, Kotzebue, Nome, Bethel, everybody would be in tsunami warning. And so now we can regionalize it to where the actual event is taking place. That's pretty huge.
Right. So identifying points of failure and also points of success and making sure we continue down that successful path so that folks are warned as quickly and accurately as possible.
Absolutely. And, you know, to get our communities involved to prep themselves, prep their businesses, prep their tourism, prep their schools, you know, just make this an annual thing they need to be doing.
Right. So as citizens wanting to be prepared, we should be prepared to learn more about that test that's happening usually toward the end of March every year.
Right, and you should be happy that it's happening.
Right.
Instead of upset. Definitely be happy that it's happening.
Right. Just as we test tornado sirens in tornado country, we also have to test the tsunami program as well.
Right, because there isn't enough time. You know, for a local tsunami, the wave will arrive in less than 2 minutes. So it's super important that people know what to do.
Very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for helping us know more about the Tsunami Ready program and the test. And the Tsunami Warning Center is a very unique and very important job in the National Weather Service that is just fascinating to me every time I visit the office. So,
it's the only one for the continent. You really should come check it out.
It's an international effort.
Yes.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
And thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider. We'll see you next time. This is better. Here's a look at the sea ice edge, and you can see there's higher concentration areas of ice here just off the northern part of the Chukchi Coast. Here's Barrow, here's Wainwright, and the white areas are above 80% concentration, the blue areas below 80%, and of course no shading is below about 20 to 0 there, so open water. The northerlies are pushing this closer to the coast for now, so don't be surprised if you're seeing ice across the northern part of the Chukchi Coast. Winds are going to switch, though, to more of a westerly flow, so that will help encourage that ice to move along in the current in the coming days. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for the latest updates there. Watch the changes here in southeast. We have a broad southerly flow tomorrow, 15 knots, 3 to 4 foot seas on the inside, 6 to 7 foot seas for most areas on the outer coast tomorrow, and then we get into Friday. Bam! Southerlies there, at least gale strength across the outer coast, 45 knots or so south of Sitka. More of a south and easterly flow from Yakutat to Cross Sound. 15 to 20 foot seas are expected in many of the areas in the outer coast. There will be higher gusts, and again, the track is a little bit iffy at this point, so keep your eyes on the forecast. If you're in southeast, conditions will be changing as you go into Friday, so watch for updates from our friends at weather.gov/Juneau. Northerlies in Lynn Canal at 25 knots, southeasterlies in Clarence Strait up to 35 with an 8-foot sea. South Central will see some changes as well, just not as dramatic. Easterlies inside of Prince William Sound, 15 knots outside, 5-foot seas. Southerlies coming up Cook Inlet, 10 to 15 inside of Shelikof Strait, still light and variable, and northerlies east of the Barrens at 15 with a 4-foot sea. On Friday, again, the winds do pick up, just not quite as strong. Feeding into the backside of that low pressure system, 25 to 30 knots or so, 20 knots inside of Prince William Sound with a 4-foot sea, 9-foot seas on the outside. Start watching for higher gusts out of the Copper River Basin. Northwesterlies crossing Cook Inlet, And the Barrens at 35 knots, 25 knots with westerlies coming up in Shelikof Strait with a 7-foot sea, northwesterlies east of Kodiak Island with 10-foot seas there. Across the Alaska Peninsula and inside Bristol Bay, winds are a little more gentle on Thursday, 10 knots with 3-foot seas inside of Bristol Bay, 15 knots south of the Alaska Peninsula with 4-foot seas there on Thursday. Becoming north and westerly with time on Friday, 25 knots from Castle Cape to Chignik with 8-foot seas, 5-foot seas down the coast, and 4-foot seas for the Bering Sea coast on a northwesterly wind at 20 knots. For the Aleutians, north and easterlies coming through the central and eastern chain, seas around 4 to 5 feet on the Bering Sea coast, 5-foot seas for the Pacific, and easterlies coming from Adak all the way out towards Shemya at 20 knots with a 6 to 7-foot sea. As we get into Friday, the winds pick up there as well. Remember, there's another system gaining strength south of the chain, so we're going to start wrapping those winds in there, coming up to gales 30 to 40 knots with 10 to 16-foot seas out in the west, 7 to 10-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, and 10 to 19-foot seas there from Nikolsky to Adak on the Pacific coast. Winds remain a little less out across Nikolsky to Unalaska initially for Friday, but watch for that forecast on Saturday. Light winds across the Bering as we get into Thursday, controlled by high pressure. We'll take that to 15 knots with a 3 to 4-foot sea from the north and from the west on Thursday. And that's going to pick up a little bit more in the Kuskokwim Delta region, around 30 knots with a 7-foot sea on Friday. But all other regions so far will be unaffected and still under the control of high pressure, so 10 to 15 knots there on Friday. As we look at the north slope, watch for the wind shift again. South and westerlies here across the Chukchi Sea, 10 to 15 knots with a 2 to 3-foot sea. Still looking at westerlies for the Beaufort Sea coast at 10 to 15. By Friday, everything switches to the west, and the winds start to pick up here in the Beaufort Sea coast, 20 knots with a 5 to 6-foot sea. Remember, that's going to have an impact on which direction that ice is going, so it won't be that directional flow coming in from the north toward the Chukchi coast for Barrow and Wainwright there. So things should change, maybe improve for you, helping to move that ice on its merry way. Here's a look at the forecast tonight. Look for showers across south central and southeast. Rain and snow will continue in the north with periods of icy and slippery and kind of blustery conditions across the eastern Brooks Range, while snow will continue to accumulate above 2,000 feet. A chance for a brief storm across the Talkeetnas tomorrow. Showers across southeast and building storms in the Gulf and across the west. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.